one talk show host focuses on the Masons, and another talk show host focuses on Catholics, and another focuses on Jews all day, and I'm sorry, I've just studied society and history. There's evil people running every group in every major nation, evil in high places. And the New World Order is in control of all of those major groups. And so when we go on air and we bash Jews, or we bash Catholics, or we bash Protestants, or we bash... what's the other group I was mentioning? Any of these groups, the people, the Masons, the people that are members of that, 99% of Masons don't even know that there's degrees above the 33rd degree. They think 33rd's it. And the masters, the Masons that get up to the 33rd level, they're not supposed to tell the porch Masons, the outer Masons, what's going on. So you get up here and you bash a bunch of Masons, and then people who are Masons know that George Washington was one, the founders of Texas were, and they weren't evil men. So then they think, well, I'm not evil, and I'm in a fraternal order raising money for kids, and this is just in good old boys club. How dare people lie about us? See, if you just approach it and attack them that way, instead of showing them, no, this is how they control good people, and this is what is above it, this is how they're leading you around by the nose, thinking you're part of something good and big. Just like they've recruited 23,000 corporate execs, and they plan to double that. They've recruited 26,000 preachers. They plan to double that. The average preacher's given a handout and a presentation that sounds good, sounds reasonable. And so now when they hear me on air bashing the FEMA camps and the takeover plans, well, they've been told it's all for good reasons, and they've been included in it, and they're being manipulated. So we have to reach out to them and show them the process of how they're being manipulated to wake them up. Does that make sense? I mean, it's not intellectually fair for people to say that I cover up for the crimes of Israel when I have always exposed the fact that Israel admits they staged terror attacks on their own people. It's now admitted that they staged events in Uganda with Idi Amin, but the Israeli commandos going in to save the hostages didn't know that the government had set them up to be shot up. Generals will put troops down in the valley, a couple hundred of them, knowing it's going to bring in a larger force just to expose them, sacrificing those troops. It's like sacrificing a pawn. Or if you're playing chess and you're getting right down to checkmate, and it means you've got to sacrifice a knight or a rook or a bishop, you do it. You see. See, once you have collateral damage and acceptable losses, once they had that idea, that's how the military carried out 9/11. I mean, a criminal element of it with private contractors. That really is the military, by the way. Been like that for decades. Now it's just becoming obvious. The delivery systems, the weapon systems, all of it is then secreted down to the troop level. So you have to separate that out. We're not bashing the military. We're bashing who's in control of it. It's like saying, don't bash the military. Hitler would always say that. Don't criticize me, or you're bashing our brave military. Well, no, people were bashing in Germany you and what you were commanding them to do. So we have to be clear about this. It's not fair if and again, I'm not whining about myself. This is good for thought processes. This is educational. It's the only reason I'm talking about this now. We're going to your calls. Is because it's not fair if I, in my film, boldly expose the fact that Israel attacked the USS Liberty. By the way, that's now been declassified by the NSA. They have the transcripts where Israel knew it was an American ship, and they were ordered to sink it, and their pilots refused 3 times and then followed orders. So all the debate's over, all the books trying to debunk us are over. Just like Tonkin, it's now over. It's admitted that was staged. It's over. Game over. It was exposed. Now it's up to us to get the Chicago Tribune and other papers out that reported that. I never said that Israel didn't run that attack and wasn't involved. I went further and said, by the way, the U.S. was clearly involved with Israel, planning to go against the Russians, go against Egypt. It's like if 2 guys rob a bank and people say, no, only 1 guy robbed a bank, and I say, no, 2 people robbed a bank. And people say, no, you're defending Israel. That's a fraudulent attack. That's not real. You've got people who want to teach the public that all evil flows from one place, and that is Israel. And that's just not the case. Evil is in high places everywhere. Ahmadinejad calling for world government 2 weeks ago. Just because he's bad and that regime's bad doesn't then mean that the New World Order is good. See, the New World Order can point at Ahmadinejad and these other countries and say, look what they do to their people, look at their oppression. Oh, we're good. No, you're both bad. See, it's evil in high places is the point, is the main thing I'm trying to get across to people. You know, it's the same thing. I can get up here 3-4 months ago and say Tony Blair just converted to Catholicism. He's sworn that he would never be EU chairman. He's not in line to be EU chairman. It supposedly rotates in order, but the EU does whatever it wants. He's converted to Catholicism because the European Union is basically a vessel of Rome. I mean, that's in their founding documents from the Treaty of Rome. It's an extension of that empire. You can debate who's driving it, but you got the last two popes calling for world government and having all the religious leaders I mean, that's bad, and that's a bold stance to come out and say that's bad. And now Tony Blair, they admit, is about to go for EU head, and he lied the whole time and said he wasn't, and I was right. And then my detractors just lie and say I've never talked about any of it. When I've had all these guests on over the years, I've covered it 100 times. It's the same thing with the Masons. I've had hundreds of guests on over the last 13 years exposing it. I've made films, The Order of Death, about it. I have done it. And it's frustrating to me, not that I'm being attacked, because that means I'm having an effect. And a lot of it's paid for disinfo, but most of it is just people parroting what they heard somebody else say. It isn't that I'm being attacked that bothers me. It's that I know that a lot of our energies that could be used towards fighting evil, a lot of our energies that could be used towards warning people about the vaccines or the water or the air or the open borders or the Second Amendment or the national ID card, that about half of our movement, it's about half, spends none of their time actually doing anything but fighting with each other and saying who's right and who's got it right and who's an agent and who isn't. But it does bother me at a certain level because I know I'm for real. You know, I know I've got my integrity. I know I try every day to be a moral, upstanding person. And I try to not hurt people's feelings either. You know, when Pat Robertson came out and said China's doing what it has to do with a forced abortion and infanticide, I read his quote. I played the CNN clip where he came back and said, yeah, I do agree with that. And I had lots of Protestants, and I even had Christian radio stations. Some of them get mad at me and threaten to take me off the air, and a few of them did, because I came on air and said Pat Robertson was bad. I don't like having to polarize the audience. I don't like having to turn off whole groups. You know, I'm trying to get the basic message across and reach as many people as I can. But, I mean, when Pat Robertson comes out and endorses Giuliani, who is, pro-abortion, all of it, you just, if you're a Christian, you can't support him. And now most people agree with me about Pat Robertson. But I don't like having to do this, and I don't do it in some type of vitriol where I'm the high and mighty judge up here telling everyone how bad they are. I don't judge Tim Haggart. The guy definitely got led astray and got in a lot of trouble, and I'm sad for him. And it's bad what happened to his church. I don't take any pleasure in laughing at others that are doing bad things with their lives or indestructive lifestyles. None of us are perfect. And I want listeners to know this too. People are always saying, well, you need to do this, or you need to do that, or you need to have this higher moral standing, or you need to say this on the air or do that. Hey, I'm not your preacher. And I'm not your leader. And I'm not holding myself out as some super moral standard. Okay? And telling others, how they're bad morally. I'm saying it's wrong for cops to be throwing quadriplegics out on their face and laughing at them for no reason. And I got more reports Aaron brought me. Police allegedly hang quadriplegic man. News Channel 8. Jurors ruled the city of Pasadena must pay $80,000 to a quadriplegic man who sued because police officers jerked him out of his wheelchair and hung him upside down to search him. Cornell Greedhouse sued the city and 4 police officers for assault, battery, false arrest, false imprisonment, excessive force, intentional infliction of emotional distress, invasion of privacy, and negligence. And the cops, what they said in the arguments? They said, well, the standard way to do a search is a pat down, and you got to be vertical, and he can't stand up, so we hung him up. Long as we follow